history about the most prolific businessman, industrialist, not only to the riverbed, but at one point in time to America, and that would be Mr. John M. Olin. People have asked me, they said, Larry, you hunt fish all the time, right? And I said, yeah. How in the world do you have time, did you get time to get involved with this Olin history? Well, most of you probably don't know it, but he was born, well, he wasn't born, he was raised 3 blocks up the street on the left-hand side on the corner of Clifton State in the F.W. Olin mansion. So, Jan and I turned down that street to go to our home, and my mother just happened to be John Olin's secretary in the 1930s. And she became a stay-at-home mom, and there were a lot of times that something would happen and she would just say, oh, I wish Mr. Olin had seen that. And so then my grandfather, my mother's father, was the head machinist of the Western Cartridge Company. And did anybody sitting here work at the Western or Olin Industries? Okay, I'm preaching to the choir. I got to mention my dad. I was talking about a check. I have it back there. I'll show it to you later. What was it? 1933. That check made out to my dad. Who was looking at it? Right. From the Western Cartridge Company. Now, my dad started as a mail boy in the 8th grade at the Olin, the Western Cartridge Company. This check that I brought tonight paid to the order of Roy A. Reed in the amount of 4 cents extra overtime. Grandma had hid that check for some reason and it came down through the archives. It was never cashed, but I can show that to you later. Okay. I got to work at the powder mill. You know where the powder mill? That was the original site of the Equitable Powder Company, which F.W. Olin founded and became the industry. But in the early 60s, if you were a coach in Alton and wanted a summer job, that's before we had summer driver education, you could go down there and for $1.75 an hour, you got to work in the powder mill as a laborer. You would put on a pair of asbestos coveralls, and they would give you a brass scoop shovel, and you would fill the frame of the powder pits were real deep, and that's how they cleaned the powder pits. So I had the pleasure of being working in the powder mill. But John Merrill Olin, born November the 10th. Now, I have to look at my notes because there's so many dates, and I'm not going to confuse you. 1892. That's the same year that his father founded the Equitable Powder Company. So I'm going to skip back to his dad for just a moment. F.W. Olin, Franklin W. Olin, on the corner of Cliff and State. A lot of you drive by it every day. That's where John Olin and his 2 brothers were raised. He was the second son. The oldest son, F.W. Jr. And then Spencer T., and we know that name, the 3 Olin boys. They were all raised on State Street. The carriage house is across the little brick street on the side, and the pasture behind the house. It's vacant right now. It was, my information says it was the first air-conditioned house in the state of Illinois. I went to the landscape, one of the associations, and they said, well, there's another house that claims that they were the first. I said, okay, well, flip a coin, who cares? But we know that house was one of the first air-conditioned homes. It was the Wise home before Mr. Olin bought it. It was built by a family by the name of Wise, who of all things were farmers across the river. No bridge. I don't know how they got there. Must have kept the stables and everything over there. That was before the tractor. But that's where John Olin was raised. He and his two brothers. And he went to school in Alton. How many of you know about the Olin building on the campus, the old campus of the Alton High School? Yeah. How did it get there? FW Olin. Money. And they had the plaque there, you know, they had the bronze plaque, the FW Olin plaque. And of course, that's where John Olin went to school, in Alton. Now, I am not clear on the dates of the high school as we know it, the old high school, and where he may have gone before. Someone has told me the high school was at Roosevelt High School. Is that right? Yeah, okay. That's where he went, you know, went to school. Until that one, he was already out of school. At age 16, before he reached his 17th birthday, he went to Cornell. That's where his father, F.W. Olin, had gone to school, Cornell University. And I'll tell you a few stories about Cornell if I don't forget them. I think they're kind of entertaining. All three boys went to Cornell. F.W. Olin, Jr., and then John Olin, and then the younger brother, Ben. Tragically, F.W. Olin committed suicide. Jr. F.W. Olin, Jr. He had some situations that, and he was in a hospital in New York City and had 24-hour care. The nurse was called to the door and he jumped out the window and killed him. And there's stuff that you can find out about that. I don't like to go into stuff like that, but so that meant there were two boys. John Olin, at age 16, going on 17, went to Cornell and got a degree in chemical engineering. His family, the entire Olin family, F.W. Olin, had come from Vermont and ended up in East Alton and bought the equitable powder. A lot of people don't know this about F.W. Olin. He was a Major League Baseball player. He played for the Washington Nationals. That was before the major leagues, as we know them today, were formed. And his wife was from Toledo, where he played baseball. That's where he met her. They had the three children. And of all things, when John Olin graduated in 1913 from Cornell, he came to work directly for his dad at the Western, let me get this straight, Western Cartridge Company. Y'all know how that company got its name, the Western Cartridge Company that we've heard about? There were two big-time manufacturers in America, Remington and Winchester, both on the East Coast. Okay, you got to stop and think about the dates. 1913, Mr. Olin started to work for his dad. In 1917, what happened? First World War. There was a total demand for cartridges and powder to load cartridges. So, under the influence of the Olins, they said, okay, we got to do this. Well, the two big companies on the East Coast, Winchester and Remington, said, these little guys in a town called Alton, Illinois, they're intruding on our business. We'll run them out of business. They being Winchester and Remington, cut out all supplies. Of course, they had powder. John Olin, F.W. Olin, said, you don't know who you're playing with. They bought little companies and started their own. You know where the shot tower is down there? You know where the Olin brass? That came from that way. And it ended up, they became, somebody said, Larry, what about the name? Simple. We'll call our company the Western Cartridge Company. You guys are on the East Coast, we're going to be West. Well, St. Louis, Alton, Illinois. That was the gateway to the West, right? So that's how it got its name. Who told me that? Oh my gosh. No, I don't remember. But I always thought that was kind of interesting because if you ask 100 people how Winchester got its name, Yeah, they might know because of the Winchester rifle and all that. How did the Western Cartridge Company get its name? They wouldn't know. Okay, so what happened was World War I. The Olins were so dynamic in their business. They contracted the government, and they made underbid the other two companies. That was the start of the ball rolling for them to become ultra wealthy. A war. 1970. Okay, after the war, things kind of wound down in the ammunition business. Well, the Olins were hunters, so they loaded, shotgun shells and stuff like that. John Olin goes to his dad, and this is a great part of the story. He goes to his dad, and he said, "Dad, you know what? The rumor is in New York, in New Haven, Connecticut, where Winchester is, that they are in big dire trouble. Because you know what they're doing now? They're making tools, roller skates. I have a pair of Winchester pliers in my pocket, Winchester knives, Winchester this, Winchester that. No ammunition." Okay, they went into bankruptcy. Winchester receivership. John Olin told his dad, he said, "Let's go buy that. Let's buy that company. They got the Winchester repeating arms and Winchester ammunition." His dad said, "No, that's crazy." 1931, what was that the start of? The Depression. Money, couldn't get money. John Olin was such an influential businessman that he went to St. Louis, went to some of the wealthy situations, banks, loan company, and said, "Dad, if I can get the money, $5 billion. He got $5 billion. He went to look at the Winchester in New Haven, Connecticut. He bought the company. They moved the ammunition part to East Alton, Illinois. And just to be I think they just to tell people who they were, we're going to call this company Winchester Western. They didn't, they kept their name and their company in it. So that was in 1931, and it was moved here in 1935. 1931 was when he bought it. They moved it here. They kept the Winchester repeating arms, guns there in New Haven under the leadership of the Olin people. So they controlled Winchester out there, and of course, a lot of you might remember this. Winchester had a shotgun in 1912 called the Model 12. You got one? Yeah, I got one. It became the most sold, famous, repeating shotgun. It's a pump gun. And they were made until 1964 when Mr. Olin retired. So, I don't know, James looked it up on the internet. We actually researched our gun. If you have a new one today, in good condition, and it's over 1,000 it all depends on the grade. Mine was a gift from Mr. Olin to my mother in 1930. We looked it up on found the serial number and then went through the thing to find it. And it's called the Reed Family Model 12. But that Model 12 just escalated. So, we get to 1935, they moved into here. What was about to happen? What was starting to happen in 1935? Number 2, war. It seemed like the Olins had a crystal ball, or a fortune teller or something, because the first time that they started on the road to glory, World War I. World War II, 1935, things started happening, and in 1941, help me out, December the 8th? 7? On December the 6th, Mr. Olin had 35,000 people working for him. Now, if you can imagine this, a lot of people know it, some people don't know about it. The small arms plant in St. Louis, you know what that was? Okay. That employed the largest number of people ever still today in one arms plant. And the day that the bomb was dropped on Pearl Harbor, Mr. Olin had 35,000 people working for him. Okay, the war went, they loaded ammunition, the orders came, and then the figure that blows my mind. At the end of the war, when everything was calculated, the Olin Industries had loaded for the Allies 15 billion, 600 million rounds of 50 caliber. 15 billion, 600 million, and then the thousands of, doesn't make a difference. I think that was 30 and 50 caliber. But I was telling somebody earlier, you get a dime for a shell? I don't know. And today, because of what we're going through in the industry today, the Olin down here, and we know about different things being moved down to Oxford, Mississippi. I don't know anything. I know about the politics and everything. Today, Olin Industries down here, Winchester, is loading 1 million rounds a day of 9mm alone. 1 million rounds a day. And that goes to the service, the different armed forces, and the police and the people like that to shoot. Stop and think about that. 1 million rounds a day. Try to go buy some. No, sorry, we don't have any. Can't get any. But anyhow, I thought that's a sidebar. Okay. So World War II, and then at one point in time, you know where the defense houses are down in East Alton? What they call the defense houses by the, what's that shopping center again? Wilshire Shopping Center behind that. This is the kind of businessman John Olin was. He went to the government and he said, you know what? I got all these people working for me. Wouldn't it be great if they could live and walk to work? The government said, okay. They built them, they're still there. That's how the defense houses came into existence. John M. Olin in the government. And of course, the small arms plant over there in, I don't know what subdivision or what part of St. Louis that is. It's not there anymore, but they had, I think they had 17,000 workers there, and then 23,000. But he had other places that he employed people, not too big around. But this was always the center of the Olin industry. In 1944, his dad retired. John Olin became the president of Olin Industries in 1945. And I guess I need to back up a little bit because, and I'll get to that when we talk about the mansion. We're talking about his career as an industrialist now. But one of the things that's kind of interesting, he was a hunter. And he knew that I guess he knew there wasn't always going to be a war, so he decides we are going to focus on hunting shotgun shells and other kind of shells for sportsmen and for shooters, people that trap shoot and stuff like that. So he started focusing on that. Actually invented the paper shotgun shell that we know of now was one of his inventions. I have a picture at home, and he was a recipient. He had 24 U.S. patents. Either he had the patent or he was a partner of the patent. You know what a partner of the patent is? Grandpa went to work in 1930s, early 30s for the Western Cartridge Company. He was a machinist. Grandpa, I have a picture someplace, we couldn't find it, we were going to bring it, of him in his asbestos coveralls that says Western on it, holding a check. Grandpa invented something. Who got credit for the patent? You know why? When you went to work, I don't know if every place is like this or not, is it? You go to work, you sign a paper. We'll give you money, I get the patent. Grandpa didn't care. You know, he had that check for $50 or whatever. Well, I don't know the amounts, but he had a big smile on his face, and so 24 patents. And in 1950, in the late 40s, and there's some boxes up there. I think, Steve, did you bring one of those Western boxes? Yeah. Shotgun shells, and I brought one. It says Western Cartridge Company. That's in the 40s. And if you're a hunter, if you're a shooter, you've heard of the Super X. Okay. Mr. Olin was duck hunting. And hopefully I have time to tell you about my involvement with the Greenbrier Club when we talk about King Buck. But he was hunting with a guy from Arkansas. And down, obviously in Arkansas, and the guy said, hey, don't shoot, let them land. The ducks landed on the water, take them, boom, boom. Olin couldn't figure this out. Shoot these ducks on the water, what kind of sport is that? So he comes back, the guy told me, he said, the shot dispenses and everything, and I kind of make sure old time hunting. So Olin comes back, gets his group, they work on a shell, and they patented it, they decided it was worthy, and he had Nash Buckingham come from, the famous outdoor writer, come from down in Mississippi, and came up and put his stamp of approval. Out there at Nilo, there's a picture of Nash Buckingham. And the guy said to Mr. Olin, man, this shell is super excellent. Olin said, can't put super excellent on a box, how about super X? That's how I got it. Super X. The guy was always, he was always thinking ahead, coming up with stuff like that. Now, I got that story from, maybe I better, I had a great privilege. 1954, Olin, chairman of the board, and retired in 57, moved to St. Louis in 61 to the golf house. The golf house is where he entertained, and maybe I can remember yet to tell you this when we talk about the mansion, talk about Nilo. But his life moved on. He quit hunting. He devoted all his time to Nilo. We'll get to Nilo in just a minute. But in 1951 is when he bought Nilo. He bought a farm, 500 plus acres, and then expanded it to 600. But that was in 1951. And here's what I say about John Olin to people. He was to conservation what Babe Ruth was to baseball. Now that's saying a lot. But they were the same era, same time era, in the 20s, into the 30s. But what he did for conservation, and when we talk about Nilo, we'll get into a little bit more of that. The Atlantic salmon, there was a big deal about this fish is going to disappear. John Olin said, no, it's not. And he invested millions, I don't know the amount of money, into hatcheries and stuff like that to save the Atlantic salmon. I'm not an Atlantic salmon fisherman. I am a hardcore waterfowl hunter, so I do know more about his waterfowl thing. You'll see that he had another hobby. He loved horses, okay? Loved horses. The Kentucky Derby is coming up next month. The 100th running of the Kentucky Derby in 1974 was won by a horse by the name of Cannon Nave. Who owned it? John Olin. He he put his mark on horse racing, 100 years of racing. In that particular race, there were only 163,600 people watched the race. Can you believe that? A horse race, 163,000? And I don't know if he told the other jockeys, you better not win this race, I want my horse to win. Candidate. But Candidate won it. He had other horses and had some success, but that particular horse, and I know the young lady that has it. He was given a gold pocket watch, 100th running Kentucky Derby, Candidate. And he put it in a glass, I don't know, had a glass piece put over it. She's got it in her. It's a young lady that we happen to know, but I told her to hang on to it, keep it. During his, and then I guess the last date, then we'll move on. John Olin lived 1 month shy of 90 years. He left the St. Louis area and went to the compound. Is that what they call it, Jan, the compound?
East Hampton.
East Hampton. That's where he passed away at age 89. During his lifetime, he was married twice. He had 2 daughters by his first wife, and we'll get to that when we talk about the mansion. He outlived both of those daughters. He outlived his first wife. He had a phenomenal life, and during his life, if you could only, and I don't have time to go through all of it, but our son is an MBA of Washington University School of Business. And you know about WashU. Mr. Olin was on the board of directors and then a trustee. Our son went to the Olin School of Business on the campus of Washington University. Okay? Cornell University, the School of Business there is the Olin. The veterinary school, and I got a good story about the veterinary school that I'll get to you when we talk about King Buck. John Olin. Cornell's conservation people will be at the Nature Institute, I think this weekend. They're doing a thing. Millions and millions of dollars. Did you know that there is an Olin University of Engineering? Yeah. It's out east someplace. I've not done a lot of research on it, but it was founded. He wanted to make sure that there were continuation of trained engineers. And I've just opened the box a little bit about the millions of dollars that he gave back to America. He's pretty simple. He's a pretty simple guy in one respect. And in the other respect, and we're going to get to that next, financial. Stop and think about some of the places that he owned. You had the fishing lodge in Fond du Lac, Greenbrier, the yacht club down there in Stuttgart, the most revered, they call it the Old Winchester Club. I've been there. Jan and I were married 51 years ago, our First Christian Church on Washington Avenue, Alton, Illinois. We lived here, raised our kids here. A gentleman at our church was John Olin's personal valet for 16 years. And in the 70s, when Mr. Olin left, for example, the golf house, left the mansion. He told Mr. Olin told my friend Connie, he said, Connie, I want you to get rid of this junk. One man's junk, another man's treasure. And what would happen, Mr. Connie adopted our son Todd as a Christian. Connie didn't have any kids. Well, he had a daughter, right? He didn't have any sons. He adopted our son there at the church, and he would tell Todd, as we go out to church, he'd grab Todd and he'd say, hey, I got something in the car for you. Todd would go over there and get a box of junk. This came from Mr. Olin's. It was going to be thrown away. He said, get rid of it. I don't have any use for it. Here, Tom, here's. We take it home, put it in the garage. I went in to collect, and I was too busy coaching, too busy teaching. Oh my gosh, that stuff today. Anyhow, Todd's got a lot of it. You know, we've actually. I won't get into the book, for example, but we might talk about that later. Any other questions about the man, Olin the man? And there'll be other stuff. Let's go to the mansion. Yeah. Has everybody seen the mansion? You got that on the map? Get out of the way, Larry. Come on. Okay, there's a picture of the mansion. I've been in the mansion on several occasions. It only has 18 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, 18,000 square feet. I would like to, that'd be one of my questions. Why? Why do you build a house that big? What? I don't know. Do you need a house that big? You know where it's at? Everybody knows where that house is. That's John Olin's home. Okay, that's in Fairmont. Fairmont was the first subdivision of all. When he came back, went to work for his dad, he started dating and then later married a young lady by the name of Levis. Does that name mean anything to you? She was the granddaughter of William Levis, who founded the largest glass company on the face of the planet, right here in East Alton, the Illinois Glass Company. When they got married, when John Olin and Adele, I get names, I'm not real good with names. Adele, when they got married, her grandfather gave them 32 acres in Fairmont, overlooking the Mississippi River. In 1926, /27, this house was completed at the cost of, am I in the round zone? At the cost of $600,000. They didn't have to go to the bowling alley to bowl. There was a bowling alley in the basement. He would hire little kids, Mr. Olin. You want to make a couple bucks a night? Come over to the house, you're my tenant setter. And he would invite people to bowl. I've been in the house on several occasions. In 1961, Mr. Olin had left. I just want to make sure I got the date right. $600,000, 1927, 3-story Southern colonial house, built of native stone. He said, I want stone from any place in Illinois. Did it come out of the rock quarries here? I don't know. I've never done any research on that. But the great room, the dining room, almost the size of this room. The table, I don't know who made that table. It only seats 20. I think it's still there. The servants' quarters, there were servants' quarters in the house, and then there was the house next to it. The garage is stone. I don't know if you can see it on there. It's to the right. Yeah, it's on the right. But when the owners have purchased the house now, I don't think I'll use any names. I don't think it'll hurt anything, but that's insignificant to the point. They've done a lot of work on the home. In the year 2000, it was a unique situation. The owner showed me a certificate. That particular house here in Alton, Illinois, actually it's in Godfrey now, that area has been annexed to Godfrey. That house was voted the #1 mansion in America by the Mansion Society. Now, to clarify, you had to belong to the Mansion Society in order to enter your home into the contest. And here's how it won. Was it built to be a mansion? Yes. Is it livable as a mansion today? Yes. And then the thing that won it for them is the promenade. You can see forever. It sits on the edge of the cliff, you know, out here. Had tennis courts, had bowling alley. Bowling alley's been converted into archery range right now. But Mr. Olin called that, among all his properties, he called that the River House. I think we're going to spend this week at the River House. In that house, he and Adele raised their 2 daughters. She hated the house. She didn't like the house. Too big, too this, too that. That was my understanding from Mr. Roman. Connie said, 60 years, I would be waiting at the front door to get a call to pick somebody up at the airport to bring them there. 4 presidents have stayed in that house. Can you imagine who they are? With the time frame, Franklin Roosevelt and Eleanor were guests there on more than one occasion. Did anybody know about it at all? No, they didn't. Didn't want people to know about it. Number 2, the number 2 president that was there quite often, I understand, and this comes from my friend at church, was Harry Truman. Harry. And then number 3, President Nixon. But I don't know if Nixon was the president. I don't know the years of his presidency. And then, of course, General Eisenhower, who became president. So 4 presidents. There are actually pictures out of the Nature Institute. You know where the Nature Institute is? There are pictures out there of Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt. Have I got those names right there? Yeah. The Nature Institute, for example, you know where that's at? It's in the Levis Lane. Mr. Olin, in 1912, 1920, around there, Mr. Levis gave that the lodge was there. What we know as the lodge, if you've ever been there, it's there, and it's sat on 12 acres, and he gave that, the Levis family gave that to the YWCA of Alton. They couldn't maintain it. The YWCA was, I don't understand that, but they couldn't maintain it. So in 1950, Mr. Olin bought all that property. He owned 332 acres from the mansion out there to that house. And there was a story that, and when we're talking about the Nature Institute, that's where he entertained the guys. They would go out there and shoot. If you've ever been there and walked to the overlook, the 2 trap houses that are there, those are actually skeet houses. Mr. Olin, I was told the story, and I couldn't believe it. They said on a trip to Chattanooga, Tennessee, he went up Lookout Mountain. Mr. Olin and whoever he was with saw the Confederate cannons on the rails, and they moved, from one side to the other, and then they fired. He came back to Alton, Illinois, went out to they call it the Olin Conservation Area at that time when he owned it. He said, he brought a couple of engineers with him from the factory, and he said, you know what I want? I want you to build me a cannon. I want you to build a rock wall out over the river. I want the tracks put in there. And people would, if you worked for Olin, you didn't ask why. What are we doing? What's this for? He just did what he said. Okay? That's what my mother always said. So the guys built that. And I knew about it. He would shoot the cannon on the 4th of July, and on a birthday or something, and then we shoot it out over the river. And it's like, you know, I'm in Lookout Mountain, Tennessee, like a Confederate soldier. And he'd shoot it on the first day of the year. So when I went out there to talk to the Nature Institute about it, no, there's no tracks here, no Cam, Larry, somebody made that story up. Well, my friend, the church said, Larry was there. So I went to down here to the corporate people, and I got a list of some of the senior guys, and I went to a guy that I had some confidence in, and I said, Ed, do you know anything about the cannon out there at the old conservation area? He said, no about it. He said, that was my job, to load the stupid powder. He said the powder had to, like it was a Civil War thing. So that was pretty, unless he made that up. You know, one of the cool things about Mr. Olin, do you know who the person was that Truman, when we defeated Japan in the Second World War, who was the president? Truman. Truman told General MacArthur, when the Japanese surrendered, there was a big ceremony to sign the surrender declaration. And he told MacArthur, and this is the kind of guy John Olin was, you can sign that. He said, you know what? I think there's a guy by the name of, not the Cardinal pitcher, but Wainwright, General Wainwright, should sign it. Now, I didn't look this up. I hope I'm not making a mistake, but Wainwright was the person, the U.S. general, that signed after Japan the documentation that we surrendered. And he signed his name. John Olin found out about this. Wainwright had been incarcerated, had been in the war. He had been captured and served like 12 months in captivity. When he got out, John Olin found out where he was, invited him to Alton, Illinois, to go to Nilo, to stay at the mansion, and then took him to Greenbrier to hunt. Now, I know people would question that, but I had the Greenbrier registry from the time Olin had if you hunted there, you had to sign in and then make a comment after the hunt. Wainwright's name was there, along with Ted Williams, Red Shane East, and Stan Musial, and Roy Rogers, and that was the kind of crowd that ran there. Has anybody ever been to the Winchester corporate office down here off of Vernon Highway? No? Have you? What's the first thing you see when you walk in the door? There is a life-size bronze statue of John Wayne. Cowboy hat, cowboy gun, rifle, and everything. Okay. When Dick Hammett was the president down there, I've written some stories for Winchester and for a while now, and doing research. And my foot in the door is I have a piece of Olin memorabilia that you might be interested in if I can bring it down. Okay. The first thing you see is this life-size bronze statue of John Wayne. So after a while, I asked Dick Hammett, I said, I can't get over this statue. What's it here for? He said, Larry, that was Mr. Olin's favorite cowboy. Okay, let's build the bronze statue. He didn't actually have it built, but it's there to honor him. Okay. The home was lived in. It was actually, Mr. Olin got tired of the mansion. He moved in '61 to St. Louis. It stayed a little bit, I guess it was empty, but there were people in and out. 1975, SIU, you can have the mansion. Here's the deed. So they deeded the mansion to SIU. Hey, quite a deal. Only one problem. Fairmont. People going to meetings and everything, running up and down the streets and honking their horns and having parties. Fairmont, I don't know if any of y'all live in Fairmont. Where's my boy? I don't know if any of y'all live in Fairmont, but you know what? Fairmont people got together and said, we're putting an end to this. What is Nilo? Nilo, come on. Olin spelled backwards. There was a contest. Did you know about that? There was a contest. Mr. Olin called it the farm. Finally, he got, in 1951, he bought it. He said, I'm going to make a conservation area, a research center for hunting and shooting. And we'll build a dog kennel. And he was involved with, I'll think of him pretty soon, but he was Secretary of State under FDR. Who? April Harriman. For Labrador dogs. The rich people of America were the Labrador people. Common guys like me didn't have it. Didn't have Labrador. But he said, you know, we're going to have a Labrador kennel. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Blah, blah, blah. We got to name this place. We're going to have a contest. Different guys go up, different names up. And a guy by the name of Stan Koenig, Koenig, came up to Mr. Olin and he said, I've got the name for the farm. He said, what is it? He said, Nilo. He said, Nilo. He said, why? He said, that's Olin spelled backwards. He said, I'll think about it. Then he played the trump card. Stan played the trump card. He said, Mr. Olin, Nilo is Olin spelled backwards, but it's lion spelled sideways. Stan, here's your bonus check. So it became, in 19, that's the picture of Mr. Olin in it was in the 1970s, and that's King Buck next to him. That's one of their famous pictures. Okay, it was built for, you know, it's only 15 miles from the plant. And he would take people out there, the important people, and the list of people that have shot there is endless. Ted Williams and Stan Busey on Red Shandy's baseball player. Mr. Olin's favorite golfer, Mr. Watson from Kansas City, had an open invite there. I asked Roger Jones, who's the manager now, a good friend of mine, we hunted together. I said, Roger, if you had to pick one guy out of all the people that you know in 20, almost 30 years that's hunted and shot at Nilo, who would it be? He said, Larry, that's simple. That would be General Schwarzkopf. Because they had him come out there, didn't tell anybody, you know, they didn't want anybody. That's when John Wayne and Gary Cooper and all those guys came to be guests of Mr. Olin. They didn't tell people in town, oh my gosh, they called the telegraph, here comes, you know why. We want the cars lined up, people want autographs. It would become one of the great conservation centers of America. Now, why did Olin do this? He said after the Second World War, he got the idea after the First World War, came into reality after the Second World War. He said there's not enough, there's going to be so many guys coming home from the service that want to hunt. How do they hunt in England? And in Europe, they hunt on preserves. A guy by the name of Philip Goodwin, who was an artist in New York City, a starving artist, went to New Haven, Connecticut, to the Winchester Corporation and had this drawing of a guy on a horse, cowboy on a horse. And you've seen it 100 times. I've got it on my hand. That's what I wrote. He sold that to Winchester. When John Olin bought Winchester, he had to buy the logo. I don't understand that, but it's been their logo since 1919, the rider on the horse. You can look at any documentation, you can never find that, never find it, and but that's who did it. And that guy became a famous artist after that, by the way. On one of the things up there, John Olin's second wife, Evelyn, was an outdoor person. She loved the outdoors. She and Mr. Olin were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. There's a copy in the thing up there, in the showcase. 1958, they were on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine It's the only time a gun has ever appeared on Sports Illustrated magazine. The gun that she's holding is a 21, I think that's the number of it. It's in the Cody Museum. It's valued about $30,000. I mean, these guns, you know, he had some engraved, he had all this and that. But is it time to go? Okay, King Buck. Okay, we'll skip some of that stuff. King Buck. Real quick, that's out there. That's not the original. That's a Nilo, but that is not the original. The original hangs down there behind the president's desk. Well, Mr. Olin had it hung. The most famous dog in American history. Period. I know people say Lassie. No. They say this dog, that dog. This dog, number one, the first dog to ever appear on an American stamp, King Buck. King Buck won the National Field Trial Championship back-to-back, 52-53. I did an extensive interview with the artist, Mr. Maynard Reese, in 1958. Mr. Olin called this guy who had won the duck stamp competition 2 times, called him, hired him to come to Nilo and sketch his famous dog, King Buck. Maynard Reese told me, he said, I spent 3 days with that stupid dog. And the dog drove me nuts. I finally went to Mr. Olin and said, here's my sketchbook, I got to get back to Des Moines, Iowa. That's where he's from. Mr. Reese had won 2 duck stamp competitions. They picked out that picture. Okay. It was and they entered it in the waterfowl stamp competition. Okay, the federal duck stamp, the first $3 stamp in American history, King Buck. It says it right, there's a copy of it over here. Okay, after the competition was over and he won it, Mr. Olin called the committee and said, you know what? We've had some complaints about my dog being on that stamp. And the committee chairman said, what? Complaints? He said, yeah. Well, you are John Olin of Olin Industries? Yes, I am. They said, well, Mr. Olin, we will change the rules. The rules for waterfowl stamps now say waterfowl only. Immortalizing King Buck, the only dog that ever appeared on the federal duck stamp. It is the only stamp in American history, look at it, that features the dead bird. Further immortalized. If you go to Nilo, Olin spelled backwards, mine spelled sideways. Buck's Crypt is out there, and I guess I better tell this real quick. Anybody ready to go? I got 5 more minutes, I'll let you go. Or you can go right now. Okay, Mr. Olin, when King Buck died, my first pup was out of King Buck. Couldn't have any papers, no papers for my dog, saying that he was out of King Buck. He could have been, that dog of mine could have been out of some alley dog, but he was out of King Buck, okay? They came from Nilo and King Buck sired him. Okay, King Buck never threw a good pup for a field trial. And I brought a book, Labrador, and we don't have time to get into that. But anyhow, Mr. Olin, when King Buck died, he had a statue made of King Buck, life-size statue. Buck is buried there at the kennels in Nilo. If you ever get out there, National Hunting and Fishing Day, make sure you go see that. Do we have pictures? Oh. That's the statue of Buck. There were 3 statues made. One was sent to Cornell, to the veterinary school, Cornell University, where the Olins went. It was sent there because Mr. Olin gave the money to build the veterinary wing of Cornell. You heard this story? Okay. Mr. Olin goes to the dedication of the Olin wing of Cornell, the veterinary medicine school. Looked around. Let's see the statue of Buck. Mr. President of Cornell, where's the statue of Buck? Oh, it's in the dressing room there, where the guys, where the veterinarians come in and change clothes and put them on. Mr. Olin didn't say anything, went in, saw the statue, came back out, called the president over and said, look, I don't know what he said. He said, I'll tell you one thing. He said, the statue of my daughter is not in a place where guys take a leak and get dressed. I want the statue moved out of there and put someplace else. Mr. Olin, because John Olin gave me millions of dollars to build a research center there at Cornell. We got a call not too long ago from one of the, I don't know who the guy is. He was a collector, a big time guy. There were 3 statues made. Number 3, we called the foundry where the statue was made. Don't know where the third one is. If you can find it, it's worth about 5, 10, 12, 30,000 bucks. Nobody knows where it's at. Might be down there at Nilo in Albany, Georgia, where John Olin's stepdaughter's daughter lives. They still live there. Okay. The other thing, kind of an interesting story, and all these stories, like I said, are pretty much true. National Hunting and Fishing Day is the only day that you can go on to Nilo without being a paying corporate shooting. They use it for hunting and shooting, but you have to at least pay. Marlene, our friend Marlene knows what you have to go through there to have a party out there. It's but on one day of the year, it's open to the public. That is the Saturday, the 3rd Saturday in September. You can go out there free of charge, see all this stuff, walk around, walk on hallowed ground where all these famous people were famous. You guys are as famous as they are. Okay. But why are we able to do that? Mr. Olin sitting there, I guess behind his desk, board, whatever. President Nixon, please. Nixon comes on. This is Mr. Olin. I don't know how I introduce this. You know what we need to do? We need to set aside a day to honor sportsmen in America. What do you got in mind? I want a day set aside called National Hunting and Fishing Day. Nixon said, okay. Because John Olin gave Nixon millions of dollars. I don't know. A lot of money for campaign. So, thanks to John Olin, people don't know this, we have National Hunting and Fishing Day. Okay, there would be more, but we're out of time, and I hope I've touched all the bases, and if you have any further questions or anything, maybe I can answer. Anything what I do.
Well, there's a lot of things you could talk about, but like you said, time's way up.
Okay. Time's way up. Okay.